With very little hesitation, French counter-terror police moved into the Bataclan concert hall in Paris. They were forced to move quickly because the terrorists were killing hostages. One witness said the gunmen were silent and calm and just shot people randomly. They would reload and carry on. The attackers in the hall, reportedly 3 of them, then blew themselves up when the police raid began. The survivors hurried out, some with their hands above their heads, others with their head in their hands. The paramedics went in. They found a massacre. One official described it as carnage.
We were by the bar, so we heard firecrackers, or what we thought were firecrackers. We turned around and then I saw 2 young men, no older than 25, with Kalashnikovs. They told us to lie down. There was one who kept gesturing for us to get down. We all lay down. The whole room lay down. I was completely under other people, and they kept shooting, but they would stop from time to time.
One of the first attacks of the evening was at the Stade de France, where France were playing Germany. At least 2 suicide bombs were detonated outside the stadium. After the match was over, many of the spectators waited on the pitch and in the stands, not sure what was going on and whether it was safe to leave.
The game carried on all the way to the 90 minutes. As far as we were aware, it was, even though we were getting news reports, we thought it was something trivial. We thought it was a hoax or something that had gone wrong. We didn't realise the full extent of it until we got outside.
This man's life was saved when shrapnel was stopped by his mobile phone.
When he hung up, I was crossing the road and it exploded in front of me. Everything went up in flames. I felt the reverberations and I left. I fell down, then got up. That's when you saw me. You were already in the area. Here's the phone that took the shot and it's that saved me. Otherwise my head was in pieces.
President Hollande was in the crowd. He was rushed away to the Ministry of Interior and Safety. Events were just beginning to unfold across the city. At a restaurant in the 10th arrondissement, the center of Paris, attackers opened fire on diners through the glass windows. This was filmed immediately afterwards. The man tries to get people to come and help an injured woman on the ground by the car. 14 people died here. Shots were also heard near the Pompidou Center and on the Rue de Charonne.
I'm registering the pain, the sadness, the horror and the fear tonight. Paris is once again in mourning. The death toll is very, very heavy. Very, very heavy. The places that were hit were places where Parisians like to go out, where the young people of Paris like to go on the weekends or in the evenings. They obviously wanted to hit as much of that liberty of that youth as they could.
As the gendarme confirmed that the attackers had been killed, President Hollande visited the Bataclan Hall and addressed the nation.
To all those who have seen these awful things, I want to say that we are going to lead a war which will be pitiless. Because when terrorists are capable of committing such atrocities, they must be certain that they are facing a determined France, a united France, a France that is together and does not let itself be moved, even if today we express infinite sorrow.
In Washington, President Obama gave a statement on live television.
The American people draw strength from the French people's commitment to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We are reminded in this time of tragedy that the bonds of liberté and égalité and fraternité are not only values that the French people care so deeply about, but they are values that we share.
France temporarily shut its borders. American Airlines suspended transatlantic flights to the country. Meanwhile, Parisians were told to stay indoors, and the city went into lockdown.
This is going to change the feel of Paris a lot, and the feeling will be that not enough was done after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, beyond some pretty limited marches and people saying how terrible it all was. I think people will be looking for very, very strong political action now.
Paris is already showing the sort of defiance that strengthened the city in the days after the Charlie Hebdo attacks in January. As the crowds left the Stade de France, they sang La Marseillaise. But this is the deadliest terrorist attack in Europe since the Madrid bombings in 2004. And it's happened in Paris again. Robert Nisbet, Sky News, Paris.
Just want to bring you right up to date with several breaking news lines that are reaching us at Sky News. David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, has warned that we must be prepared for a number of British casualties here in these attacks in Paris. We're expecting to see the Prime Minister on camera before too long. Not sure of the timing on that, but fairly soon. Expect to see David Cameron. We're also hearing from sources here in Paris that police have found a Syrian passport on the body of one of the bombers at the Stade de France attack, which is several miles to the north of the centre of Paris where I am. And also around here near the Bataclan Club, which was the scene of perhaps the worst of the atrocities last night, where some 87 people have died. A suspicious black car has been found by police, which they say has Belgian number plates and is of interest to police. And the other thing is here that most public buildings, schools, libraries, museums, gyms, swimming pools, all those have been closed today. But we're also hearing it's affected sport, that a lot of sporting events have been postponed over this weekend, particularly the major European rugby tournament, the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup. But all those matches in France, certainly today and probably for the whole weekend, are going to be postponed until a future date. Kay, who's just less than a mile from me and near the scene of some of those other attacks, has some more news, I think, Kay.
I do, Jeremy. Yeah, we're about a mile or so north of where you are. The restaurants behind me is where 14 people were shot dead as they had their Friday night dinner last night. What we are hearing, according to French sources, French news sources, there are reports of a clear link of an arrest of a man in Germany earlier today with last night's attacks in Paris. We have no further information at this stage, but according to reliable French media sources, they tell us that there is a clear link of an arrest of a man in Germany earlier on today with last night's attacks in Paris. We'll try and find out what's going on as far as that's concerned and update you further. We can tell you that Her Majesty has written to President Hollande earlier today saying, Philip and I are deeply shocked and saddened by what has happened. So that's a note from the Queen to Francois Hollande, offering her sincere support and condolences on behalf of both her and indeed her husband as well. Reports of a clear link of a man in Germany today with last night's attacks in Paris. He has been arrested. We're trying to get more information on that for you and we will update you. Let's tell you what we do know so far though about how events unfolded last night. The attacks began at about 9:20 local time when a gunman opened fire at Le Carillon bar behind me in the 10th district of Paris with an automatic weapon. Witnesses say he then crossed the road to the Petit Cambodge restaurant and continued shooting. Police are believed to have engaged in a shootout with him there. Authorities say 14 people were killed in that attack. Several others were injured. Next, 5 people were gunned down at a pizzeria on Rue de la Fontaine de la Roye and one person was killed on Boulevard Voltaire nearby. Minutes later, at around about 9:30 local time, there were multiple attacks at the Stade de France, where a friendly match between France and Germany was underway. 2 suicide attacks and a bombing near the entrance left at least 3 dead and 1 injured. Hundreds of people poured onto the pitch after the attack, and the French president was evacuated from the stadium. And as you heard from Jeremy, it is thought that one of the bodies found at the Stade de France had a Syrian passport on him. As far as the French president was concerned, he was evacuated very quickly from that stadium for his own safety. At around 10 to 10 local time, up to 18 people were killed when the Belle Equipe restaurant on the Rue de Charonne was showered with gunfire. And the deadliest attack took place where Jeremy is at about 10 o'clock local time at the Bataclan Theatre. Attackers opened fire on the cafe outside the theatre before opening fire inside and taking concertgoers hostage. 3 gunmen blew themselves up when police stormed the building. A 4th was shot dead by the police. 8 have now been killed, 7 using suicide vests. President Hollande has declared a state of emergency across France, closing the country's borders and asking for military reinforcements in the Paris area.
Dear compatriots, what happened yesterday in Paris and at Saint-Denis, near the Stade de France, was an act of war. And faced with war, the country must make the appropriate decisions. It's an act of war that was committed by a terrorist army, Daesh, a jihadist army against France, against the values that we defend throughout the world, against what we are, a country that is free, that talks to the whole of the planet. It's an act of war which was prepared, organized, planned from the outside, and with internal complicity that the inquiry would allow us to discover. It's an act of barbarity, total barbarity. At this moment, 127 dead and a large number of people are wounded. The families are in distress and in pain. The country is also suffering. And I've set up a decree in order to proclaim national mourning for 3 days. All measures in order to protect our citizens and our territory have been set up within the framework of the state of emergency. The security forces, the internal security forces and the army, to whom I render homage, especially with regard to what happened yesterday and allowed us to neutralize the terrorists. The army and the security forces therefore are mobilized at the highest possible level of their capacity. And I also have ensured that all elements be reinforced at a maximum level. Military will patrol the heart of Paris throughout the next few days. France, because it's been attacked in such a cowardly fashion, such outrageous fashion, so violently, France will have no pity with regard to these Daesh barbarians, and we will use all necessary means within the framework of the legal system, but will work internally and externally in consultation with our allies, who they themselves are also targeted by this terrorist threat. Within such a painful, such a serious period, and such a decisive moment for our country, I would like to call for unity, for people to gather together, to be courageous, and I'd also like to address the Parliament that's going to be gathering together in Versailles on Monday in order to gather the nation together in this trial. France is strong, and even if it's wounded, it will always rise up again, and nothing will be able to affect it, even if at the moment we're overcome with sadness. France is solid, it's active, it's valiant, and it will triumph over barbarism. History has reminded us of this, and of the strength that today we're able to mobilize will certainly convince us of this. My dear compatriots, what we're defending is our country, but far more than that, the values of humanity, and France, in fact, will take it upon itself its responsibilities. And I'd like to call you to this indispensable unity. Long live the Republic, and long live France.
The President of the French Republic.
The events in Paris are the worst act of violence in France since the Second World War, the worst terrorist attack in Europe for a decade, a horrifying and sickening attack. Our hearts go out to the French people and to all those who lost loved ones. Today, the British and French people stand together, as we have so often before in our history when confronted by evil. Shocked but resolute, in sorrow but unbowed. My message to the French people is simple. Nous sommes solidaires avec vous. Nous sommes tous ensemble. We stand with you, united. While the full picture of what happened is still emerging, we know that there were multiple terror incidents across Paris, and over 120 people are feared dead, with many more injured. We must be prepared for a number of British casualties, and we're doing all we can to help those caught up in the attack. These were innocent victims enjoying a Friday night out with friends and family, no doubt at the end of a hard week. They were not seeking to harm anyone. They were simply going about their way of life, our way of life. And they were killed and injured by brutal, callous murderers who want to destroy everything our two countries stand for: peace, tolerance, liberty. But we will not let them. We will redouble our efforts to wipe out this poisonous extremist ideology, and together with the French and our allies around the world, stand up for all we believe in. I've just chaired a meeting of COBRA to review the security situation here in the United Kingdom. The threat level is already at severe, which means an attack is highly likely and will remain so. Our police and intelligence agencies work round the clock to do all they can to keep us safe. Ever since the coordinated firearms attack in Mumbai in 2008, we've all been working together to ensure we could respond to such an attack. This summer, police and other emergency services carried out a major exercise to test our response for multiple firearms attacks. And in the light of last night's attacks, we will, of course, review our plans and make sure we learn any appropriate lessons. It is clear that the threat from ISIL is evolving. Last night's attack suggests a new degree of planning and coordination, and a greater ambition for mass casualty attacks. And we must recognize that however strong we are, however much we prepare, we in the UK face the same threat. That's why we continue to encourage the public to remain vigilant, and we will do all we can to support our police and intelligence agencies with the resources and the capabilities that they need. The terrorist aim is clear. It is to divide us and to destroy our way of life. So more than ever, we must come together and stand united and carry on with the way of life that we love and that we know and that will never be moved off. I hope to speak to President Hollande later today, and I'll make clear that we will do whatever we can to help. Your values are our values. Your pain is our pain. Your fight is our fight. And together, we will defeat these terrorists. Thank you.
Now, the international community has been quick to condemn the attacks. Germany has expressed its shock at the attacks, while Russia condemned what it described as inhuman murders. NATO said terrorism would never defeat democracy. President Obama described events as heartbreaking and said the US was standing by to provide whatever assistance the people of France needed.
Once again, we've seen an outrageous attempt to terrorize innocent civilians. This is an attack not just on Paris, it's an attack not just on the people of France, but this is an attack on all of humanity and the universal values that we share. We stand prepared and ready to provide whatever assistance that the government and the people of France need to respond. France is our oldest ally. The French people have stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States time and again. And we want to be very clear that we stand together with them in the fight against terrorism and extremism. Paris itself represents the timeless values of human progress. Those who think that they can terrorize the people of France or the values that they stand for are wrong. This is a heartbreaking situation, and obviously those of us here in the United States know what it's like. We've gone through these kinds of episodes ourselves. And whenever these kinds of attacks happen, we've always been able to count on the French people to stand with us. They have been an extraordinary counterterrorism partner, and we intend to be there with them in that same fashion.
Aux enfants de la patrie, le jour de gloire est arrivé. Contre nous de la tyrannie, l'étendard sanglant est levé. L'étendard sanglant est levé. Entendez-vous dans les campagnes mugir ces féroces soldats? Ils viennent jusque dans vos bras, égorger vos fils et vos compagnes. Aux armes, citoyens, formez vos bataillons. Marchons, marchons.